Welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast, where we empower you to build a better ranch and transform your operations into a thriving business. I'm your host, John Haskell. Let's get started. Welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast. Today I want to share some thoughts on a specific group of people that we wind up dealing with on a fairly regular basis. Today I want to talk to the people that are either starting a business from scratch or trying to turn one around that has been underperforming. The most important thing I want to say here is that doing a turnaround or getting something started takes a while. There's a great deal of momentum involved in building a business. And that momentum, if it's an existing business that you're trying to change course with, can come from things like, prior poor cash flow. It can come from prior debts. It can come from prior organizational and cultural and even operational practices and habits that have become strongly ingrained over the prior years of the company's operation. In the case of a startup, we have no organizational habits, we have no organizational culture, and we have to build that from scratch. And that doesn't just happen. That takes some serious effort and frankly takes a while to get some good momentum built. The thing that I want to make sure people understand when they are starting, particularly and turning around and going in the right direction, is that things always take longer than you think. It always takes longer to build a business from scratch. You will encounter unexpected delays, you will encounter unexpected problems, expenses, etc. We don't need to be discouraged by the idea that things take longer, but it is a good idea to always have extra runway, to always have extra cash, to always have extra capacity so that we can get ourselves through those unexpected delays, unexpected expenses, etc. We do hear about examples where people, find an enterprise that isn't working in their business and they cut it out and all is good after that. And while that is definitely true, that if you have, for example, a failing enterprise in a multi-enterprise operation, getting rid of it will be the thing that makes a big change. It doesn't often show up in your equity right away. It doesn't often show up in your cash flow right away, because oftentimes the sort of effects of that poor or underperforming enterprise or even the whole business, they exert a drag on the future. And often that's in terms of cash flow and debt. I want you to think about starting a business or turning a business around like starting an engine. When I start my lawnmower or I start a chainsaw on a cold morning, it takes quite a bit of pulling that ripcord to get that thing to kick over and start running on its own. With my chainsaw, for example, I probably had to pull it on a cold day a half dozen times to get the thing going. I put a lot of effort into the beginning. After the engine starts and the fuel's running and the spark plug's firing and that thing's driving itself, then the energy I put into it is very low. Then all I have to do is just keep the fuel topped off. I want you to think about a business in the same way. I've used a flywheel analogy many times in the past. This is very similar to that. There is a point where you're going to put a lot of effort in, and then there's what we think of as like a breakover point, where suddenly that flywheel becomes hard to stop. It's the same with my chainsaw engine. Once I get it going, it runs, and you can kill it using a kill switch, but if you were going to stop it by putting resistance on it, it's probably not going to happen. This is the place again where I think it's very important for us to approach a turnaround or a startup with a plan. I want you to have some very well thought out KPIs or key performance indicators. I want you to be monitoring those on a regular basis, making sure they are going the direction you want to. And then I want you to have some expectations. Well, if we increase sales, what should we see? Right? What should we see in our cash? What should we see on our liabilities? What should we see on our inventory? The same, I use sales just as one option. I'm very careful to think about KPIs that are integrative, meaning they include many things. If we only looked at revenue, for example, we may miss the fact that we are also incurring a lot of new expenses. If we only look at expenses, we may miss the fact that, we're incurring a lot of debt. And so we want to make sure that we have a holistic view of our financials at one level. But then we also have some very specific metrics that we're looking at closely. We deal with some businesses where revenue is the key. They've got other things locked down. They've got a great gross margin. Their overheads are reasonable. They need more revenue. When we drive revenue and we see it go up, let's say by $10,000 a month, we should see that reflected further down the P&L in the net income for that month. If we don't, we're quick to say, okay, what happened? We want to take that approach of making the change and monitoring for the expected outcome. It's not terribly hard to do this. Some businesses are more complicated than others. A business where you only need to increase revenue, I would say, is very rare. Most of the time, we're trying to change our gross margins, for example, which may mean simultaneously decreasing direct costs and increasing revenue. Sometimes we're trying to change our debt load, right? So that means maybe creating more cash flow, using that more to take care of liabilities. There are lots of different options here. And please don't get distracted by the revenue example. It just happens to be a very simple one that does occasionally apply.
If you don't know your numbers, you can't manage your business, plain and simple. That's why at Rancherite, we help ranchers understand their financial picture with clear reporting, smart systems, and practical advice. Whether you're growing or just getting organized, we'll help you make sense of your numbers and make better decisions. Get started at rancheritellc.com.
All right. Now, the other thing is, what's the difference between being persistent in a business that is failing and being persistent in a business that is on the right track? And that's where these KPIs have to tell us, are we headed in the right direction or not? We may not be seeing the ultimate result that we want to see, but if we have interim measures, we can tell whether or not we're going in the right direction. Bud Williams used to always say, you do the right thing until it works. Well, how do I know if it's not working? Well, then it works. But what if it's not working right now? It's still the right thing. You just need to keep doing it until it works. Well, that's harder to do in stockmanship in my mind than it is with financials. With financials, we can come up with some interim metrics and some interim forecasts, if you will, of what should happen if the business is going the right direction. If we increase the gross margins, our cash flow should go up. If we increase turnover, we should see more frequent deposits to the bank and of what magnitude, and we can go through those things. If we lighten our debt burden, if we improve our working capital, let's say, we should be able to pay our bills on time instead of 30 days late. There are lots of places there where we see people making progress, and what makes me sad is oftentimes they make progress and they make good progress and they're on the right track, but they get tired and then they quit too early. From my experience, turning around or starting a business takes at least 3 years to get it sort of operationally where you want it to be and functionally where you want it to be. We know we can get started fairly quickly, and we may even achieve some measure of success in the first year or even in the first few months after making a big change or getting started. But most of the time, it takes changes to so many different systems and so many different parts of the business that we need to make sure we give it time to work. It breaks my heart when we see people quit just as things are about to change and go over the other side. We've seen cases where, people work themselves all the way out of debt or all the way out of their bad debt. They've finally gotten to a point where the business is ready to perform, and by that point, they're tired and can't go on. We've really got to make sure that we persist when we are going the right direction. And if we need to, I'm not against quitting a bad enterprise. There are businesses that should not continue. But what makes me sad is when it's a good business and we don't see that we're making progress, we don't feel that we're making progress, and we quit just before it breaks over and becomes successful. I'm not going to argue the fact that fatigue is real, burnout is real, etc. But I think one of the things that really helps most people is if they have a plan and they can see they're making progress on the plan, I feel like burnout isn't really an issue at that point. You definitely can be tired, but burnout in my mind is a function of doing something that is hopeless, and feeling hopeless is different than something actually being hopeless. I, feel this way regularly in my morning exercise routine. There are plenty of days I don't want to get up and do it. I get up and do it anyway because I know that the outcome is worth the effort. Again, whether you're starting a business from scratch or whether you're doing a turnaround, I would, or making major changes to a business, I would always advise you to have a plan. prepare yourself mentally for things to take longer than you expected, have a little extra cash, have those extra people, the resources, etc., that you need to keep yourself going even when it's difficult. We see lots of people right now that are enjoying a lot of success in the livestock business because of where markets are, and that's wonderful to see. We see people that aren't enjoying that also. And while that makes me sad, if they are on the right path, they will definitely get where they need to be. Because over and over again, we learn that the market makes some difference, but that is not nearly as important as the things that take place within your business. Those are the things that really make the difference. So if you're on the right track, don't give up. If you don't know if you're on the right track, figure out how to know and what that would look like, make a plan, and then execute on that plan. But keep going. There is a tremendous amount of reward for people that do it well. And those rewards are not just financial, but also, mental, emotional, and other things. We can do wonderful things for our families when we are successful in our businesses. Thanks for listening today. Hope this was helpful to you. We will talk soon.
Thank you for tuning into the Ranchonomics podcast. We hope this episode helped you win today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend.